Okay, so here you play with Rubinetti,
Rubinetti, yeah.
Alberto, also in
Jorge,
Buenos Aires.
Jorge.
Jorge.
Well, he was again a very promising young player, and almost the same age with, or maybe a little bit older than Quinteros. But he was also a very good tactical player. And we had a Benoni. I played Benoni for black, one of the most important variations from Benoni. A quiet one, if you look at this, with G3 later on.
He was also
So,
from Argentina? He was
also Argentinian player, yes. And now, after bishop g7, bishop g2, castle, no? Castle, knight bd7. Okay, so now h3 gives the move. And now the idea for black and for white is very clear. We'll see. White wants, if possible, to come with the knight from f3 in c4 and have some small initiative on the queen side. Black wants to play, if possible, a6, b5, and rook b8. That is the idea. Controlling also the square e4 with the rook in e8 or with the queen in e7. We'll see. In any position, these two are the ideas for white and for black. So, okay, now black played a6, a4, of course, rook e8, and knight d2. As I told you, he wants to come to c4. Yeah. So, rook b8, knight c4, and now knight b6. Well, the alternative is also knight e5. Knight e5 is almost even in any position. Kasparov played in a very well-known game against Kochino in 95, and he won a very beautiful game, very tactical and very complicated. If you play strategically, it's better to play knight b6. It's more quiet, but very good for black also, and the idea is very clear. So knight b6. Now, if he trades immediately in b6, white has nothing. So he has to retreat the knight, controlling 3 times the square b5. So he plays knight a3. Well, and now, after knight a3, bishop d7. Yeah. And now a5, knight c8. Now, the idea from black is to play later on knight c8, a7, and then in b5 to arrive later on in b5. But now has to move something because the pawn from a5 is under attack. So he has to move back the knight in c4. And now, right in time, we have the possibility to play bishop b5. Now, if he takes in b5, again, white has nothing, and black takes the initiative, here. If white plays by mistake, knight takes b5 is wrong, it's not good.
It's a mistake. Yeah.
So he plays queen b3, he defends the knight from c4, and he wins now the two bishops, the pair of bishops, because now the best move is to take in c4. Okay, we eliminate the knight from c4, he has to take back with the queen, and right now, knight d7. Well, the game is more or less even, very complicated, but black has no problem at all. Why? Because all his pieces are very well posted, and the bishop from g7 is very strong. The diagonal from g7, on the black diagonal, the bishop is very good piece right now for black. So black can be satisfied with the results of the opening. So rook a3, knight e7, queen a2. He wants to control everything on the queen side. You don't have the possibility to play immediately b5 after queen a2 because you lose the pawn a6. But black doesn't want to play b6 immediately or b5. Plays quiet. What did I play? Queen c7 or what did I? Knight f5. Okay, knight f5. Black wants, if possible, to arrive in d4 and with the same idea, knight d4 in attacking in e2 and later on after move e3, knight b5. Very good counterplay for black. So now he has to move and he plays himself e3. Okay, he controls the square d4, but now the bishop from c1 is a little bit passive, So black has time to play knight f5, controlling all the central squares, and black has no problem. Again, he's has very good position. But it's a long way from here, it has very good position, but how to win? I mean, you try to win with black. So rook d1, queen c7. Okay, now finally we have a good idea. If we can, we have two ideas, knight c4 or c4 and knight d3. These are the two ideas for black, The pawn c4 and then knight e5 to d3. Very good position for black. So rook a4. Now, if you play c4 immediately, after move f4, you lose the pawn from c4 because you can't control twice, in c4.
Yeah.
So we move quietly rook c8 and then king h2 again. He gives you the move. And right now, we start on the other side, h5. We have a very good initiative against the king, because the king in h2, it seems the king has a very good position in h2, but anyway, black has some good activity against the king, We'll see why in the next moves. We have an idea maybe to sacrifice a piece for 2 or 3 pawns. We have the idea to play h5, h4, and then with our knight from h6, when we arrive in h6, we can give a knight in g4 twice with check, and very strong initiative for black. But that will be the future, the future moves. Okay, so after h5, knight b1, he wants to come knight b1, d2, c4, but it's a little bit too long, So we have time to play c4, it's very good. And now, finally, he has time to move the pawn and to come with his bishop in e3. It seems that white has no problem. I mean, he could equalize. But black has already the initiative here from this moment. So we move in h6, bishop e3, and right now, h4, as I told you. Now, if he doesn't take in h4, we want to take in g3, we check, So if he doesn't take in h4, and he plays first g4, we can give the knight, and then it's okay. We can sacrifice the knight in g4, we take 2 pawns, and after queen c5, we can take the 3rd pawn. And we have a fantastic bishop in g7, very strong attacking chances, So black is clearly better here. Only black can win this kind of position. So he decided to complicate the game, and he took in h4. And from now on, we have another game. We have another part of the game. So queen e7, we want to take back the pawn. If we take back the pawn, we are clearly better, with black. So bishop g5, the only good move. f6, of course. Unfortunately, we couldn't play bishop f6 because we lose the knight from h6.
Yes.
So we have to play f6, Has to move back the bishop. If he takes black in h6, he's lost positional. Black is already winning, Controlling, the diagonal, very strong attacking chances. Okay. Bishop e3, okay.
Why? How to take here?
Well, in h6 he could take
in
the knight,
h6,
but
yes.
it's bad, it's a bad move. So he comes back to e3, of course. Now we move f5. We have the same idea, Now has to move back in g5 again, because now we're threatening to take in h4 again. Very strong initiative, probably winning again. Bishop g5, queen f8. And now we have a very strong position. In any case, we are much better, and we have a very strong initiative, with black. It's very unpleasant position for white, because all his pieces are lacking some, they are not coordinated, they don't have very good,
Coordination, yes.
coordination in any position. And the black threats are very clear. We want to play, for instance, knight h6 to f7. We want in some position to take the pawn. In some other position, we can play even f4 with clear advantage for black. And now he has to try to have some counterplay. And after knight f7, he took the pawn. Okay, he took the pawn because there's no other alternative, But now we'll see the difference. because our black bishop from g7 is much stronger than the bishop from g2. And finally, that wins in the end game later on, So we took in g5, he took in g5, and now we have time to take in e4. Unfortunately for white, he doesn't have time to take immediately in e4 because he loses, immediately the bishop with queen f4 check, or even queen f2 and finished. White is completely lost. So b3 is the only good move. And here I decided to give a check in f4, which was okay. It's a good move. But maybe it was even better. I didn't want to give immediately the strong knight from e5. But for initiative, maybe it was okay to give check in f3, knight f3 check, bishop takes f3, queen takes f3, Yeah, check takes with the queen. And now we have a very strong threat to take rook takes c4 and bishop e5 check. And is almost mate. White is almost mate in such a position. Okay, I didn't decide because I was a little bit in time trouble. Queen f4 check is the normal move. It's very strong also. Instead of playing knight f3 check. Okay, queen f4 check. Yeah, king g1. And now queen takes g5. And we look at the position. It was a very tactical until now. Now white has again to defend with the only moves. But in any case, black has a very, very strong initiative and very good chance to win. He hopes, he has a good hope to resist here, different color bishops, trading some pieces and so on. Maybe we can make a draw. He thought it's the only hope for white, So takes, and now you look, the bishop from e5 is fantastic. The bishop from g2 is very passive, That makes the difference, you see. So now on, we have to realize the advantage, if possible. So rook c1, okay, has to move back. So now rook c3, we have complete control and we want to take the pawn from a3. If you have time to taking a3, it's finished for white, completely winning position. So right now has to try to trade queens. Okay, unfortunately I have to try to trade queens because otherwise, it's the game is almost even, But now we have a very bad end game for white. It's some other kind of position from very tactical one to a strategical position. We changed the idea.
The dynamic of the...
Yeah. So it has to take in d2, and now we took the pawn from b3. And now we have to look at the position. We have a very clear advantage, the free pawn on the queen side. Finally, the free pawn on the queen side will win this very tactical game. So the only possibility to have his pawn back, he gives the pawn from a5 and he takes by force the pawn from b7, hoping that the game more or less will be even, somehow. So rook takes a5, check, takes, king, and now he could take in there. And now, is this enough to win or not? Probably, if you look at the position, the chances are not too big to win. Yeah. But it's enough because the advantage is very clear. The bishop from f1 is passive, and we come very quickly with the pawn from a6. We advance very quickly. So here everything is forced. Bishop f1 is forced. a5. But we have very little material. It's very difficult to win because the material is equal. And the advantage, okay, black is much better, but it's a problem if it's enough to win or not. Finally, you have to win the king's endgame or rook endgame. We'll see.
Okay.
But it's very unpleasant for white. If white makes a draw here, it's by miracle, And we'll see it's not enough. a4. Now we change the diagonal. We move the bishop from e5 to c5 to advance quickly the pawn to a3. This is the idea. Now, rook a6 is probably the normal move. So now bishop c5. Now we threaten f4. he controls the square e5, because otherwise we come immediately with the king in e5 and we win the pawn from d5. And it's enough to win in a few moves. f4, the only move. And now, what did I play? a3, yeah. a3 must win. So bishop c4. Finally, he could move the bishop, and he controls the square from a2. You can't advance the pawn anymore, for the moment. But the position is very bad already. So now rook c1, rook a4. That was his hope anyway. And now rook c3. We control the third rank.
Yes.
And we have the idea to move the bishop back to d4 and give maybe the exchange in c4. And that wins by force immediately, If we have time to do this, we win in 2-3 moves, So now what to do with white is the only possibility to wait, if he doesn't have any other move. So what did he play here? h4, yeah, he waits, yeah. He waits, and now bishop d4, we advance, Now, he had some luck that he could have this move. If not, he could resign immediately. Mm-hmm. The threat was rook takes c4 and a2. Yes. That wins immediately.
Yes.
Now, if you want to do this, you have to give the bishop from d4 against the bishop from a2, but we have the rook endgame Zugzwang for white, by force. So now, and that is enough, of course. Rook c2 check. f3 takes in a2, takes in d4. Okay. And this endgame is completely winning because he's Zugzwang. The king is bad, the rook is bad for white, And black king is very active. The pawn from a3 wins in any position. And now he has to play this because the threat was a2 and rook f1 check and wins the rook,
Yeah.
So, and right now he has to play only king in g2 because the threat again was rook h1. And wins immediately, So king g2, and after king f5, again he has to wait, and now Zugzwang. Now he has to move something. If he moves the rook, he loses the pawn f4.
Yes.
There's no counterplay. So the only move is to play king g2. And now I had time to take in h4. He must play f5 check. No? King back. He has to play f takes g6. King takes, and he resigned.
He resigned, yes.
Yeah, he resigned. But now the idea is very clear for black. The king has time to come until b2. You see, from g6 to b2, and that wins in any case. Another very good idea is to put the king in e5. The king comes until e5, f5, e5. And when you have the king in e5, he has to wait. No moves. Has to move only the rook, And then you move rook e1, you give the pawn from a2, you take the pawn from d5, the king is cut in g2, and any endgame is completely winning for black because the central pawns d and e win in any kind of position. Well, that it seems elementary, but it's a little bit complicated.
Because you should make it.
By high level like this is very easy.
True.
Yeah, so a good grandmaster. It's immediately winning for black. Not in 2-3 moves, but the idea is very clear, and okay, you resign.
The execution, okay. Yeah. All right.
Very instructive again, It's a little bit more difficult to understand than a sacrifice like in Sicilian and d5. You give the piece and then you mate in a few moves, you see. Yeah. This is different, but it's instructive anyway because you can learn a lot from such a game,
Correct.
Of any level, like this. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.